Hi there. Well, this is it. Ground Zero. The end. And before I start, I just want to thank everyone who's watching this. Whether this is the first one of my videos you've ever seen, or if you've been here ever since the first episode of Outlander. Whoever you are, I'm glad you're here. And here we are. 101 episodes of Outlander over 8 seasons, a show that's run for 14 years based on a 9-book series. First published 35 years ago in 1991, and all of it boiling down to this one final episode. Now, if you remember, last week left off with Jamie about to head up to King's Mountain where he knows he's fated to face his certain death. So, what happens in the Outlander finale? Let's find out. Episode 810, And the World Was All Around Us, starts out with Jamie lighting up a Burnie Cross. Just like old times, because the Ridge is off to war. Yeah, the boys are in a fighting mood, but we can put a pin in the war stuff for a while because after the opening credits, the original opening credits with original song, we've got Jamie writing out his will, leaving all his different stuff to all his peeps in a nice little montage. And after that, it's a bit of a sleepy morning time with Jamie and Claire, talking about life, talking about the bees, about death, about the future, and Jamie pointedly telling Claire that if he turns into a ghost, he's definitely going to pop back for a little peep at her, but he won't bother her, he'll just have a look. Aye, okay mate, I can't imagine what you're talking about there. And it's all kinds of that sort of thing, with Roger and Bree chatting a bit about the war and about Jamie, and Fanny's getting sad because her newfound family is about to go away and she's worried they'll die, so Claire gives her a bit of a pep talk. And there's a bit of Jamie chatting to Bree, giving her some nice chat and being nice about Frank for a change. And yeah, by the time we get round to Ian and Rachel, they basically just skip over even bothering chatting, they just kind of go, okay, see ya. And before everybody heads off for the full battle, Jamie has a quick word with the bees, telling them to look after Claire if he goes. And slowly they head off, past a few more sets before they finally go, because, yep, we're finally there. We're at King's Mountain. And it is time for war. Okay, it's not quite time for war yet, because Claire and Jamie have to have a bit more chat about some stuff, and then a little bit of planning, and then there's a bit more chat with Jamie and Claire about the riverside, talking about Jem and Mandy, and their ability to hear each other through time and space, which might be important later, and that Jamie is apparently the colour of water, because Mandy has some kind of synesthesia, I'm guessing. And Jamie tells Claire, just remember him, and a few other things, like maybe go back to the future if he dies, and she says, no chance, I'll remember you, but I'm not going back to the future. And then it's what? Oh no, it's not war yet, because this is Outlander, so we've got an obligatory sex scene. And finally, we're off to war, and Jamie makes a wee speech first, which is, it's okay, it's not exactly Aragorn at the Black Gates, but Roger blesses everybody, and that's fine. And now it's time for battle, so everyone goes charging off up the hill, and there's some shooting, and there's some ducking, and there's a bit of diving. Oh, Hiram's dead. Oh, it's fine, nobody liked him anyway. And yeah, we cut to back home, where the girls are all sitting around a table having a bit of chat about how sad things are and how worried they are, and wee Fanny comes out and tells them all off, because we've got to be brave, because otherwise they might die. And everyone's like, fair enough. Okay, cool, random. And back at the camp, Claire's decided that plainly, this episode has not spent enough time with the war, and we really need to get back up the hill, so she tears off at herself with Roger in tow, ignoring most of the dying and injured men that she sees, although she does get a bit of a fright when she sees Jamie's stunt double die unexpectedly. Turns out Jamie and the boys are fighting, and they're alright, they're doing pretty well, because, everyone's kind of saving everyone and then nodding, and then Ferguson turns up on his horse doing a whistle, and Jamie goes after him, and Claire's just getting to the top when they call the British surrender. Oh, it's a bit anticlimactic. And Jamie's like, everything's fine. And then Ferguson rides right at him, and Jamie heroically defies physics and smashes his sword apart and knocks the guy off his horse. Cool. Very Jon Snow. And it's all good. Now Jamie and Claire have a bit of a hug, and Claire realises maybe she's been worried too much and she's going to go back down the hill because she's being a bad surgeon and a doctor, so she heads off. And Jamie's like, cool, I'm going to head up and get the official surrender from Ferguson. And he's like, alright mate, you give up? And Ferguson's like, no chance, and shoots him in the chest. And Claire feels it. And she rushes up to Jamie's side, just as everybody else decides to make sure that Ferguson is well and truly dead. And Jamie says, look, I'm not afraid, we knew this was coming. And he passes away in her arms. And she's sad, and she sobs, and she holds him. And she keeps holding him. And she keeps holding him even longer. Even after everyone else goes away. And all during the night. And then the next morning when Roger comes back, goes, look, we probably ought to bury him because he's going to start to smell. But still she clings on. And she closes her eyes. and passes out, I presume, rather than passing away. And we flash back to Inverness, back to episode 1, when Jamie's ghost is having a peek, just like he promised. And Frank turns up and Jamie's ghost turns away and vanishes, walking off one set into another. And he finds himself back at Cragnadoon, and he touches the stones, and he makes the blue flowers grow, blue, just like the blue magic, and off he trots into the glen. And back at King's Mountain, where Claire's hair has turned completely white, the camera zooms down to them and... oh, guess they're both alive. End of episode... oh, hang on, no, there's a post-credit scene where Diana Gabaldon is at a book signing, and some literal Karen asks her about the familiar-looking leather notebook that she's got, and she says...
well, it's just a wee bit of inspiration.
Oh, okay, fair enough. End of Outlander. So before I get into the nitty-gritty, I want to say a short word on Season 8 as a whole. Now, I have kind of enjoyed it, but with big reservations.
Stupid fucking white man.
Not that kind of reservations. But look, there were some good moments, there was some great acting, there were some nice scenes, but in some ways, this finale started out with one hand tied behind its back. And why? Well, because as I said at the end of last week's review, there's almost nothing left in the story for us to work with. Now, in some ways that's a good thing, because it means you can make the finale literally just about the finale, stand alone, and you don't need to be cutting away to like Pigsty and William doing dodgy flirting or a different timeline or anything like that. It can essentially just be its own story. But, on the other hand, it means that you're curtailed with nothing in the story to actually work with going forward. It means that almost everything that happens here is kind of superfluous, other than the ultimate fate of the characters. And to be honest, while I don't think it made the best of what it could have done, it wasn't the worst either. So what did I think? Well, where to begin? Let's start with positives. I think the battle was okay. The cinematography was passable. The direction was mostly alright. There were some really good moments from the actors. I mean, again, this wee lassie showing that she has a future in acting. Definitely doing well. I mean, Sam and Kat had to do the brunt of the work this week, including a lot of sad stuff and a lot of emotional stuff. And a few weird faces by Sam aside, it was all really solid work. And I actually quite liked some of the chats that Claire and Jamie had, you know, all the ghosts and the heaven and the bees stuff. I liked that bit of the river whenever he said, you know, here's the 3 things. And especially when, you know, he says,
Remember me.
It's simple and it's sweet and it was nice and it felt good and it fitted. And on a historical side of things, I like the fact that they actually worked in what happened to Ferguson in real life. Because I looked up the battle because I was curious to see what happens. Because obviously Jamie's been reading it in a book. I thought it's only fair if I look it up as well. And it's funny because the only thing that Frank's account seems to have left out, and if it had been a bit more detailed and accurate to the historical record, Jamie would have known that Ferguson did shoot the person who asked him to surrender. Because yeah, apparently in real life he got shot, fell off his horse but was still stuck in the stirrup, and got dragged into enemy lines and captured. And then when one of the Patriots came up and said, Oi, you're gonna surrender, he pulled out his pistol and shot him. So that much is accurate. And it's nice, you know, it's nice that they worked that in. I presume that's literally straight out the book, and that's why Diana Gabaldon used that battle and that moment. Other than that, I don't mind that the episode's a little self-indulgent. I mean, it is a finale. It is the final episode, so managing to get everybody back in, even, you know, getting in Parsley and Bill and actually having them show up and giving pretty much everybody a line or two. I mean, they even managed to give Lizzie a line. Although it's funny that, you know, we're now at this point, we're only ever going to show one of the twins at this time. They're not even bothering to do the double up of the twins now. I mean, maybe the other one was at home with the kids, who knows. And, okay, I'm going to say that I actually thought that Jamie's whole death dream or ghostly bit, I was fine. You know, I think it worked. I mean, clearly it was a match shot because they said they couldn't get Tobias Menzies back, and if they had done, they definitely would have done more with him. So yeah, I mean, you would not know that this wasn't filmed at the same time as when they originally filmed the first episode. So yeah, technically, it came across brilliantly. It was also a good chance to get Tobias Menzies on screen, which is always a benefit. And I liked the callback. It was nicely done. You know, they got him. We got to just see the reverse shot of Jamie's face back in Inverness at the beginning. And you know, the whole thing about the flowers, I mean, they brought up the flowers and mentioned them. It brought back the whole thing, the blue vase from episode 1. I thought bringing all that back up in dialogue was quite nice. A nice bit of circular, timey-wimey stuff with Jamie literally making the flowers that tempt Claire to the stones, and they're blue flowers, and there's the blue magic. Maybe it all ties together. And also, he knows that she wants this life. He literally asked her, so he's making sure that she gets to do that. He's literally planting the seeds magically to make her go accidentally touch the stone and go through time. That's fine. But pretty much everything else is on the negative side or a disappointment. So I'm afraid there's going to be some grumps. Strap in. Okay, so let's start off with the episode itself as a whole. It's slow. It's a bit of a slog because it's repetitive. It's not well paced. I'm not saying it's utterly boring, because that's not accurate. Because also I said some of the work that is in it is warranted. But, okay, this is an extra length episode. It's not as long as I think people had said. People said it was going to be an hour and 20. It was actually an hour and 10. So, for a 70-minute episode, it took them half an hour to get to King's Mountain. That's nearly half the episode already before they even get to King's Mountain. But unfortunately, then there was another 15 minutes of essentially dithering about before they actually get to the battle. And by that point, it really worn its welcome out. Now, absolutely, setup, emotional payoff, these are important things, and I'm betting some or all of this is actually accurate to things that happen in the book, but I bet other things are happening in the book at the same time that fill out this and make it feel less repetitive. Because for this episode, it just feels like it's Jamie and Claire chat about one thing, cut away to somebody else chatting about a similar thing, then back to Jamie and Claire, then to somebody else, then back to Jamie and Claire. Whereas it feels like most of this could have been one single conversation. And when you have too many similar scenes back to back, it gets tedious. You could have done this differently. I think there could have been a world where this episode started at the battle and all of this stuff had been told in flashback. You could have done that. It wouldn't have been a big problem. I'm pretty sure they've done that before in this show. It's the same problem that I kicked off about last season, round about the Battle of Saratoga. And I think in some previous seasons as well, when there have been some of this war stuff, where you just end up spending way too much time with folk milling around and chatting. In fact, this is very similar to what happened to Roger only a couple of weeks ago, when he went off to battle. It's like the showrunners and the writers don't really understand that having scene after scene of people talk about an upcoming event doesn't instill dread. After a while, it instills boredom when the audience is just sitting there thinking, get to the point already. And it doesn't really help that the battle itself wasn't being told as a story. Now, there's no real narrative to this battle, is what I mean, and it doesn't have to be. Not all film and TV battles need to tell a story. Sometimes that's really good. You look at some TV shows, like some of the Game of Thrones stuff, or like movies where there's big battles in it and stuff. They will tell a story through the battle. The battles ebb and flow. It shows you understand people move to this and then this happens and then this other thing happens and then that means that happens. But in this case, it was literally just a bunch of lads run up a hill, so that was quite mediocre. It doesn't help also that they only had about 50 guys here. Now again, it's a TV show, and I'm not really condemning that too much. As I've said before in previous episodes, I grew up watching Sharp on TV. Now, Sharp could usually muster about the same amount of men as this has got when trying to pretend it was a battle with 10,000 soldiers in it. Here, there's meant to be 2,000 men fighting on this hill, and when they get to the top, it's Jamie and like 15 guys. Now, where's the rest of the army? Where's Fat Bastard and all his guys? I mean, where's Ferguson's adjutants and all his other things? I mean, this is a battle where apparently he had an actual campsite on the mountain, and he actually had a mistress in his tent who gets killed in the fighting and was buried with him. Obviously, you're not going to put that in Ferguson's whole story. I mean, we haven't included him as a character. This is the first time we've even seen the actor. But it made it feel small and a bit cheap. And sure, I wondered how they were going to do Jamie's death. And I was quite surprised with the bit of the bait and switch that was in the trailer, which teased Ferguson attacking on his horseback. And yeah, I mean, if you didn't know the history and the sneak shot thing, that's going to come as a surprise. So I didn't mind that. Except that when the actual gunshot came, Sam does this weird shit with his face, and yeah, it wasn't as big a shock. I mean, if you want a really good example of this, let's look at another Ron Moore show, one that he himself was still the showrunner at that point, and that's the end of season 1 of Battlestar Galactica, which did a very similar thing that's way better. Honestly, if you've never watched Battlestar Galactica, you should watch it, it's great. And that brings us to Claire. Claire Randall Beecham Fraser, hardened battlefield surgeon and doctor, who abandons her post, who ignores wounded soldiers, who drops her medical bag and then doesn't go back 2 feet to pick it up. And then, when her literal husband is shot, she doesn't put pressure on the wound for more than 10 seconds. Almost immediately she gives up. Now sure, I know, you're probably going to say, look, she's in shock, she was worried about Jamie, that's why she's not helping anybody else. But where's everyone else? Where are the rest of the medics? Where are the rest of the helpers, the nurses? Any people like that? And these are soldiers on the battlefield. Jamie, who they love, has just been shot, and everyone just kind of stands around and then eventually kneels down. It felt so theatrical and so over the top. Now again, I don't have a problem with Jamie's death scene itself. No qualms. And Katrina's doing all sorts of sad acting. Sam's doing all sorts of dignified dying. But then it just gets so stupid. Because first, it's sad, she's moaning, she's sobbing, the camera zooms away. And then we cut back and she's still there. And then we cut back and it's nighttime. And then we cut back and it's the next day. And Roger comes up and then it cuts back and it's some random times later. I mean, what is going on? This was ridiculous. The whole thing of, and then suddenly he just comes back to life. I couldn't help but think of Jon Snow in Game of Thrones. I mean, it felt really like they were just rinsing that idea. Especially when it's literally the last second he just opens his eyes and then the episode ends. But apart from that, look, they also had that stupid post-credit scene. Now, okay, they want to give herself a cameo. Fine. They did that in season 1. They're going to do it now. It's a nice way to wrap it up. But that means that in universe, Outlander is a book series that is based not on Diana Gabaldon's imagination, but on Claire's notebook, which she ripped off. Now, that means she didn't invent this story, she stole it. I mean, I could guess that it could be saying that maybe Diana Gabaldon is actually some descendant of Claire, but it's not a great look. And also just silly wee things. I didn't like this shot of Jamie walking from the cobbled grass. It just looked like grass laid on top of cobbles in a studio with someone changing lights in the background. It just looked clunky. I mean, it's just not what I would have done. You could have done some special effecty thing to make it more exciting. Also, Jamie, getting shot, as I said, wasn't amazing. And all the repetitions of people getting saved and then nodding at each other, I just felt lazy, especially with nobody getting hurt apart from Hiram. It's lazy and it's safe. And that's the problem with this episode. It's lazy, safe, dull, and predictable. And that is a terrible way to end a TV show. And it's been a problem with the whole season. I mean, the season has not been awful. It's not been great, though. It's been predictable and messy and badly written. And the biggest issue overall with this season, and a bit like this episode, is it's a patchwork of little ideas that are muddled together with no clear purpose. And it's the same in the finale. What was the point about the conversation about Jem and Mandy? Was it just so we could have that moment where Claire grabs her heart because she knows Jamie's been shot? We didn't need that. We didn't need that explained. Is it laying the groundwork for something else? Was it something that was cut? Similarly, what was the whole point of setting up Fanny being magical powered and being able to hear the stones making noises and stuff? It goes nowhere. The scenes with her this episode go nowhere. It feels like it's filler. And this has been a filler season. It's tied up a lot of stuff really badly, but then it's also left stuff open that's unnecessary. It would make so much more sense if this was season 8 of 9, but it isn't. Nothing is more clear than that they obviously have left this wide open in case they're allowed to make more. It's a safe ending. But an episode like this, where they've tied up everything else in the previous episodes, should have been its own story. It should have been a classic final episode. And yes, I'm going to bring up MASH. It should have been like MASH, goodbye, farewell, and amen. Now, in fairness, the finale of MASH is 2.5 hours long. It is a movie, but it is a story all of its own. You could have made this episode its entirely own story with acts and payoffs and a beginning, a middle, and an end. But this was 2/3 dawdling about and wanky repetition and backpatting with a few weird loose ends, as I've said. And then a mediocre battle scene, an incredibly long drawn out 6 minutes, 6 full minutes of Claire lying down being sad with Jamie having already died before the ghost Jamie bit. And then at the last second he wakes up. We didn't see blue light, we didn't see anything. I mean, her hair has changed. You could interpret this as Jedi Force heal. I mean, it's a bit like the bit at the end of the last Star Wars movie where Kylo Ren literally kills himself to save Rey. And I would have assumed that Claire was dead, but, I mean, she looks dead, but then when he wakes up, if you pay attention, her eyes do open as well. So, yeah, where does that leave us? Other than in a world of disappointment. So, here we are at the end of Outlander. And yeah, it's been a long 13 and a bit years since the first episode aired, and sure, I've had my ups and downs with the show literally from episode 1. Oh, on a side note, just to put those of you who actually have been here for the start out your misery a wee bit, or if you're somebody who's just gone back and rewatched the earlier ones, I apologise for how much of a crazy performance I put on in the early videos, because back then I was totally trying to make myself a bit of a persona, exaggerating my accent, and yeah, listening back to it now, it does feel very, very cringe to me, but I was new to it and I was trying something out, and yeah, it is what it is. But we've spent 14 years watching this show, and it's a strange thing to look back on, and from the early days of Claire's struggles trying to get home to Frank, to her struggles trying to get back to Jamie, to the wonders of the Americas and the horrors of all the wars they go through, and then all the nonsense with magic and witchcraft and time travel shenanigans. It's been a hell of a journey. But for me, it's a story that kind of met its end quite a few seasons ago. I mean, despite everything in the finale, I honestly don't feel like Outlander has had very much to offer in terms of an ongoing story. Not at least since the end of season 5. I mean, that was a season that actually felt like it was a proper ending. It was a real downer of an ending. But it was a proper ending, and I think they filmed it that way because at the time that was the end of all the actors' contracts. So it could well have been the ending, but obviously it continued. And yeah, sure, I mean, in some ways you could have also ended the show at the end of season 4 with everybody happy on Fraser's Ridge. I mean, there was a lot of things outstanding, but ultimately it does beg the question, whose story is this in the end? I mean, as we can see from the finale, it's Claire and Jamie's story, technically. The problem with that is, as I've said for the last 3 seasons, Claire's story really kind of ran out of narrative momentum a long time ago because she has nothing left that she actually needs and wants. It's just become a soap opera of watching what she gets on with her day. Because in terms of a protagonist in a TV show in the style that Outlander is, she's not really the main character anymore. She's just going through the motions. She's just doing her bit and then happens to be caught in the middle of things happening to her rather than her doing things. And the show has really struggled with balancing the adaptation of a book, which obviously can do that differently with a show that the writers of whom clearly couldn't figure it out. Now, that's also got a problem because the fan base is split very heavily between people who are purists of the book who want to see very accurate adaptations of the story, and TV fans who've never read the books who want to see a coherent TV show. And as a result, nobody's been satisfied with this. I mean, in some ways Outlander is a love story. However, it's a love story where the love's just kind of part of the background now, and then that makes it essentially a sitcom. I've said before many things about the moonlighting problem, or the Ross and Rachel getting together from Friends problem, which basically kills the will they won't they of a show. And sure, I'm pretty sure I remember reading that Diana Gabaldon said the whole point of Outlander was what happens after that first blush of romance. And it's like, yeah, cool, but the story still was all about, oh no, the world has pulled them apart. The trouble is, it only pulled them apart a couple of times, and you can only do that so often in the story. But then the rest of the story is just them sitting about at home. So ultimately, what is this story about? Well, it's the story of one woman who had an extraordinary adventure in time and space, who fell in love, suffered heartache, trauma, joy, and satisfaction. But it was also the story of her true love and his struggles, partings, meetings, and then finally them being on a hillside and he died but then he didn't. Despite the fact that they threw in a big montage, this is still a story which made the two main characters become passengers. They stopped being the thrust of the story. The King of Men ended up being someone who things happened to rather than who made things happen. Similarly, Claire, who was the driving force of the story, basically just became little more than a local GP who occasionally gets dragged into things that she doesn't want to while she'd rather be in her garden or sewing up people or giving them an aspirin. It's a really strange way to end a show that started out the way it did. And if I think back on Outlander, I'm gonna remember season 1. I'm gonna remember them falling in love. I'm gonna remember them being torn apart at Culloden, Jamie lying in a heap of the dead. I'm gonna remember Frank and Claire's bitter marriage and Brianna crossing time to be with her biological parents. It's a bit like looking at the montage at the end. It speeds up as it goes on because you know what? The stuff that happened later is less important and it'll slip out your memory a lot faster. Now, I've seen a lot of people online the last few weeks saying that Outlander's a lot like Game of Thrones because the final season is a letdown. I disagree with that though. Game of Thrones was a story that fundamentally told 3 stories. The Starks versus the Lannisters, Daenerys and the Iron Throne, and the army of the undead versus the living. And the final season wrapped all that stuff up. It just did it really badly. Outlander, on the other hand, is a show that ran out of steam around season 4. And then after that, it failed to find a proper forward momentum. All stories need to end at some point. And if there's nothing actually continuing them, maybe it's a good idea to just stop. I think that's maybe something we need to learn from this story. Because if a story doesn't have an ending, and if it doesn't have a particular point that it's working towards, it could go on forever. Or it could stop at any time. And with Outlander, because there isn't a specific ending that it's aiming towards, as we've seen, they could have ended it at any of the seasons. And this doesn't feel like an ending at all. It just feels like they went and stop. And it's unsatisfying. So maybe they shouldn't have bothered going this far. Or maybe they need to finish it properly. So what happens now? Well, I mean, Outlander is finished. So I imagine if Blood of My Blood becomes a big success with its 2nd and 3rd seasons, then that might help. And if the final book, book 10, is a massive hit, maybe there will be enough interest for them to do something extra and wrap this up. Maybe there will be a movie that follows up that finishes Outlander. I'm dubious because I don't think the viewing figures would sustain it. Also, considering they've already killed off Richardson, and by all accounts, he's one of the main important things that's hanging over the story going into book 10. So for all intents and purposes, what have we got left? We've got Jamie and Claire alive. I mean, they'll probably have to sneak him home and pretend that he's dead for tax reasons. Also, it means that Frank's book is just a really bad history book if people know that he's alive. And I'm left in a place where I'm disappointed. And no, I will not be reading the books. Like, sorry book fans, I know everybody likes to encourage me to say, oh, you should just read the books. Not gonna. I read the first one, I didn't think it was great. I read about half of book 2, maybe less, and I really didn't like it, and I stopped reading, because just not a fan of her writing. She's got some good ideas, but the page-to-page, line-to-line prose, not for me. So what am I gonna do? Well, I have already done a video on Blood of My Blood. It's been up for a while. It hasn't got that many views, but you'll find it somewhere if you have a look. And I'll make a deal with you. If, it's a big if, but if that Blood of My Blood video, which has already got about 300 views, if it gets 1,000 views over the next few weeks, then I'll finish Blood of My Blood and I'll review it. I mean, if it gets crazy views, like 2,000, I might even just do episodic video reviews of the rest of the season of Blood of My Blood. I'll follow that show from now on. Otherwise, I'll just do one video, I'll round up season 1 before season 2 airs, assuming I've got a little bit of time before that happens. I do need a bit of a break. But otherwise, I might just move on. I don't really know if or what I'm going to continue on this channel, or if I'm really going to continue it at all. It's been a journey. It has been nearly 14 years of making videos for this channel, and they're fun. So yeah, if you have enjoyed this, if you're new to the channel, and you think this has been fun, there is a whole load of content on this channel. There's a lot of videos. It's not just Outlander. If you look at the playlist bit, there are a whole host of other TV shows, and I've made a playlist for each one, and there's also 3 years where every month I literally reviewed every movie that I watched for 3 solid years. So yeah, there is a load of content. If you find me funny or amusing or interesting, I'm sure you'll definitely know something else that I've looked at. So yeah, have a look at that in the playlists. It's literally a click and a scroll, and you might see something you want. And in the meantime, comment away. Honestly, I like chatting in the comments, so yeah, drop your feelings, drop your thoughts. Tell me what you thought of this finale. Also, you can spoil all the Outlander things now, because everybody knows as much as anybody else at this point. So it doesn't matter anymore. I am happy to take Outlander spoilers at this point. So go hog wild. But as far as Outlander is concerned, these have been my grumpy opinions. Bye bye.